Good evening and thank you for joining us on this evening's broadcast of KTN Weekend Prime. My name is John Alanamu, and of course we are going to be talking about securing Kenya in the wake of one of the most tragic and eventful weeks in Kenya as regards security. Of course, starting with the deaths of those people in Mandera, bringing the tally of people dead in Mandera County to 64 within just 10 days, followed very swiftly by the resignation of the Inspector General of Police, David Kimayo, as well as the prospective replacement of the Interior Cabinet Secretary, Joseph Olelenku, with someone who might replace him, President Kenyatta's nominee, Joseph Nkaiseri. He is the Member of Parliament for Kajiado Central, also a member of the Parliamentary Select Committee on Security. We're going to be talking about that tonight, what your opinions are of the kind of qualities of the people that you'd want replacing those two whose seats are now vacant. But of course, a lot of our bulletin is also about security, or rather the lack of security in many parts of the country. We've got a terror alert in Moyale. We've got violence between two communities in Kakamega. And we've also got a heart-rending, tragic story of the gang rape of two girls in Garissa County. We'll be speaking about security on checkpoint, the numbers to join us on, because you will call in, or rather you can call in and give us your voice and your opinion, have your say on what securing Kenya ought to look like post Olelenku and post David Kimayo. Our guests in studio tonight are none other than the chairperson of the Kenya National Commission on Human Rights, Kagweria Mbogori, as well as our resident security analyst, Mr. Andrew Franklin. But of course, we'll be getting to them later. Right now, let's get into the highlights on KTN Weekend Prime.
Wetu ametuitisha security.
Staying put. Why a section of non-locals won't abandon Mandera. Garissa gang. Father forced to watch as gang raped his two daughters.
Na sasa tutaendelea kujitetea. Hatusimami mpaka tuhakikishe ya kwamba haki imepatikana kwa kesi hizo zingine mbili.
For better or for worse, Uhuru rubbishes fears of Jubilee split over ICC. And on checkpoint tonight, will the president's stern move improve security? Once again, thank you very much for joining us on KTN Weekend Prime. Now, while civil servants, including teachers and nurses, are fleeing Mandera following two recent attacks that have left 64 people dead, some casual laborers are staying put. The workers, who are non-residents of Mandera, say they will not leave the county where they have found a source of livelihood and are now banking on the government to ensure their safety and security. Rita Tinina begins our coverage tonight with this report.
Charles Kamau gives instructions. As a foreman at this construction site, he has seen the Mandera County Assembly building start taking shape since the foundation was laid 6 months ago. With an October 2015 completion date for the building, brick by brick, they work towards meeting the construction deadline. Many of the workers here are not residents of Mandera, but have continued working despite concerns over insecurity that have seen a section of non-residents flee the county following two attacks that left 64 people dead.
Number maybe something like 5 have left, though we've already gotten others who are still from the other side of Nairobi.
Abdullahi Magi is among the 18 non-resident workers at this construction site. Born and bred in Nanyuki, Magi moved to Mandera 10 years ago. Only last week, he lost his brother in the quarry attack in which 36 people were murdered. But he is staying put and keeping hope alive that government will provide adequate security to enable dozens fend for their families.
Mimi ningeuliza serikali tusaidie, tuna hali ya security. Manake tukiwa Mandera tuko Kenya, na tukiwa pia Nairobi tuko Kenya. Kwa hivyo serikali inafaa iangalie security upande wa Northeastern yote.
The Kenya National Union of Teachers has asked teachers in Mandera not to report back to work when schools reopen, while the Kenya Medical Practitioners and Dentists Union has asked its members to leave Mandera County over insecurity. But not all civil servants are withdrawing their services. Agricultural officers continue working here. They argue it's their expertise that landed them jobs here and are determined to continue offering their services but want to be assured of their security. Leaders from the county last week met President Uhuru Kenyatta and pledged their support for the government in its war against terror. Mandera County government leaders earlier in the day met elders from the county in ongoing consultations on how to ensure sustainable peace. Rita Tinina, KTN.
A terror alert has been issued in the twin towns of Moyale that straddle the Kenyan and Ethiopian borders. This follows the arrest of 3 Kenyans with alleged links to the Al-Qaeda affiliate in Somalia, Al-Shabaab. A joint Kenyan and Ethiopian security force arrested the 3 with more than 100,000 SIM cards from 3 different countries and secured sophisticated telecommunication gadgets, all allegedly traced to the Al-Shabaab terror cell. The seized gadgets worth millions of shillings are desktop computers, laptops, modems, cell phones, radio calls, digital cameras and satellite receivers, among other gadgets. Moyale Deputy County Commissioner John Cheriot said experts from Nairobi arrived yesterday to study the recovered gadgets and analyze their contents. Marsabit County Commissioner Peter Dhoko also confirmed that preliminary investigations show that the trio had come back from Somalia. Dhoko also said that the suspects are believed to have been targeting Kenya and Ethiopia. Both are part of the African Union mission in Somalia to flush out the Al-Shabaab. We now move to Kakamega County, where tension remains high along the Kabras-Nandi border following renewed clashes between 2 communities in the area. More than 25 houses were burnt down and residents left to flee as police attempted to quell tensions there. Residents say that armed men stormed one village and torched houses, destroying sugarcane plantations and looting property. They said that the clash erupted after a middle-aged man was beheaded a few weeks ago over land tussles. This latest flare-up disturbs a long decade of coexistence between the Nandi and the Luhya communities and rekindles memories of similar clashes in the 90s over land disputes.
Wanandu wamekuwa wengi sana na tukapanda mlima tukajaribu kusuia tuone ni nini mbaya. Tuliona wamekuja na mishala na mikuki na wakaanza kututupia.
We're now joined by Francis Ontomwa on phone from Kakamega. Francis was on the ground there. Francis, if you can hear me, let's start with what the intent of the attack is. We're hearing a lot of interesting opinions about what drove these attacks. Was it premeditated, as is being said down there?
Hello, good evening, John. Indeed, quite a devastating day here in Kakamega, and to be precise, here at Kubasali village in Malava constituency here. There were indeed spontaneous attacks today at around 10 a.m. in the morning when one community attacked the other community here. You put it right, more than 20 houses were touched today, with also sugarcane plantations touched. The core of this problem is the beheading of one man that happened a month ago from one community, of course. Now, this part of this tension that is now witnessed today with now the touching of the houses, many people, of course, fleeing their homes and camping at a nearby market, John.
All right, Francis, you reported on that last clash between the 2 communities down there over a month ago. The police were on the ground at least a day after that. Now, in this recent flare-up, questions are also being asked about what the police were doing in the time between these 2 attacks. Have they answered questions about that?
John, quite scanty details coming from law enforcement here. But then some of the officers that were on ground today during the operation to calm the situation were telling us that it is something that really goes deep down because it's a question of land. And they think that they are camping at that spot to ensure that normal skirmishes are happening there. But then from top officials, it is actually scanty, as I have indicated. And actually the residents of this location are pointing fingers to some top officials who are accusing of funding this violence. So up to now, really, the government has not really put their ground feet on the situation.
What's the humanitarian situation like? The footage that you sent us shows a number of people looking like they're packing up and leaving. Are they going to a specific place? Are they going to police stations? What's the situation like there?
Devastating indeed, John. Those who have been affected, we found most of them taking their properties from the affected location, moving to a nearby market, a market that is overstayed. It was run by these people who are carrying their goods and their properties. We also saw small children also coming from that place, and it was actually a very, very scary and terrifying kind of picture, so to speak. And we managed also to find a few officials from the Red Cross. So actually, I must say that what we saw on the ground was not really enough to help these people be able to even spend the night to see tomorrow.
All right, many thanks. Francis Onsomwa joining us from Kakamega. He was on the ground at the Kabras-Nandi border, where there has been another flare-up of violence between two communities living there. We will be keeping tabs on that situation and bringing you the latest updates as regards that violence there. And let's now move to another county, and this is Garissa, and there's no more good news there either. A gang of 15 men in Garissa County forced an elderly man to watch as they raped his two young daughters in turn. The girls, who are now admitted at the Garissa Referral Hospital, were attacked in Wayu village as they searched for their missing camel. Ashamwilu now reports.
It might look like an easy walk, but it's not. For Halima and Fatma, whose real identities we've concealed, life has just taken an unexpected turn. They are the latest victims of rape in Garissa. The 16 and 23-year-olds, accompanied by their aging father, were looking for their lost camel when a gang of 15 men ambushed them.
Walinizingira, wakanishika wote mara moja na walikuwa kama 20. Baadaye ndio nilijipata kwa damu nyingi.
Tied to a tree, the girl's father was forced to watch as the 15 men took turns and had their way with the girls.
Walichukua kilemba changu kisha wakanifunga kabisa miguuni kwa kamba na kuniwekelea kisu shingoni.
But like many other rape cases in Garissa, this one will most likely go uninvestigated, leaving the perpetrators to walk scot-free. Rape cases are hardly reported here. The statistics are difficult to prove. But leaders here know very well that gender-based violence is a societal problem.
We have informed these police at Hola, and they informed us they are leaving this evening to arrest the area chief who collaborated with these culprits and the elders.
And as the leadership scuttles to find solutions, only victims like Halima and Fatma know their hidden scars from sexual assault. Ashamwilu, KTN.
Remember, tonight on Checkpoint, we are discussing the security situation in Kenya post IG Kimayo, as well as Cabinet Interior Secretary Joseph Olelenku, but also the general trends in terms of insecurity. And you can have your say. The numbers are 0719 012590 or 0719 2955. You can also reach us on the hashtag that's at Checkpoint. Now let's move away from security matters to something that happened towards the end of the week, and that, of course, is a dropping of charges against President Uhuru Kenyatta. And President Uhuru Kenyatta says that the withdrawal of those charges against him at the International Criminal Court will not affect his professional relationship with his deputy, William Ruto. Uhuru and Ruto, who attended the Jubilee celebration mass at St. Paul's Catholic Church in Embu, told worshippers that the Jubilee coalition was not formed on the basis of the two ICC cases, but on an agenda of uniting Kenyans. The president further vowed to stand by his deputy as he continues his trial at the International Criminal Court over charges against him, which are crimes against humanity.
Yastahili, kwa sababu tunasoma magazeti huko wakiandika mambo ya upuzi. Yastahili Wakenya wajue ni kwa nini tuliunda hii serikali. Na sababu yetu ya kuunda chama chetu na kuja pamoja. Na nimesema sana, msingi wa muungano wetu ulikuwa umoja wa taifa letu la Kenya.
Na mimi kama naibu wake nimefurahi kwa sababu mimi sasa najua niko na mdosi ambaye atakuwa anafanya job, na mimi nitapambana na hawa, na mimi najua ya kwamba hivi karibuni nitakuja kumuunga yeye mkono tufanye kazi ya taifa la Kenya.
The candidature of ODM party leader Raila Odinga for the Homabay senatorial seat will be known next Thursday. ODM reached this resolution following a meeting held in Raila's Bondo home with elders and leaders from Homabay County. ODM chairman John Mbadi said that the Homabay electorate has requested Raila to be the late Otieno Kajwang's successor in the Senate. Sources privy to the meeting, however, claim that Raila has already been endorsed and that what remains is Thursday's confirmation to the electorate.
Fully aware that you are the darling of the heart of the common people of Nyanza and Homabay County in particular.
We express our views openly without any interference. But as I have just said, that is a weighty matter, and the final decision rests with none other than the Prime Minister Raila Amolo Odinga, because he's the one who would decide whether to offer himself or to refuse the call by the people of Homabay County.
It's the Homabay people who came to see him, and he listened to them, and we did part of the listening, and he said, I'm going to make a decision.
All right, tonight on Checkpoint, we are discussing the security situation in Kenya post Inspector General David Kamayo, as well as Cabinet Secretary for the Interior Joseph Olelenku. Who would you want to fill those slots? What is the character of the people that you'd want to secure those slots? And of course, what are the solutions to the rampant insecurity in many parts of this country? Like I said, we've got two people who know quite a bit about security matters. One of them has a seat on the committee that's going to be interviewing the nominees for the Inspector General's post. That is Mrs. Mbogori from the Kenya National Commission on Human Rights. Of course, we've also got Andrew Franklin. He's our resident security analyst. Remember to send us your feedback on #Checkpoint. We'll be back with that discussion right after this short break. Stay with us. All right, it's time for Checkpoint, and tonight we've got a heavy discussion ahead of us, and I hope that you'll be able to join us. On the numbers should be on at the bottom of your screen right now, and we're discussing security situation in Kenya, securing Kenya post that IG David Kimayo, as well as Joseph Olelenku. We've got two guests in here with us. First one to my immediate right is Kagweri Mbogori. She is the chairperson of the Kenya National Commission on Human Rights. Thank you very much for joining us on Checkpoint tonight. Of course, we've got Andrew Franklin, our resident security analyst. Thanks very much for joining us, Andrew.
Happy to be here.
Yeah, and I'd like to start with a quote from the Global Terrorism Index that sort of challenges the narrative about what's been happening in Kenya. That should be coming out onto our screens right now. And it's really about the numbers in terms of the terror attacks that have taken place in Kenya since 2011. And about 136 of these attacks, the Al-Shabaab has claimed just 10. That quote should be coming up right now. Andrew, what do you make of that in terms of that statistic? Now, that would presume, of course, that the Al-Shabaab claims responsibility for every attack. But say they did, what would happen to the 126 odd attacks in terms of explaining who's behind that?
Well, the explanations it would be very shaky if if it's not being ascribed to Al-Shabaab. Al-Shabaab takes responsibility for all the major attacks. It has not taken responsibility in the case of the Thika Road bus bombings in May. But in fact, the question then becomes who has the capability to actually orchestrate violence against security forces, for example, throughout the 3 counties of Northeast Province and in Lamu County, especially this year. Who has the capability, the weapons, the command and control structure, or even the interest to conduct a prolonged campaign? This is not something that you would normally find among common criminals. If anything, if it were any sort of criminal enterprise, it might be something back in what happened in Colombia.
But doesn't this build on the rented terrorism narrative that if Al-Shabaab's main body wouldn't claim responsibility for 126 out of the 136 attacks that we've had in Kenya, that would mean that somebody else is doing
Yes, John
the dirty
Allen,
work
you're
for them.
referring to the article in the Sunday Standard, I believe, in which crime cartels were essentially, the finger was pointed at cartels of corrupt business people and high-ranking officials in Kenya who are orchestrating attacks on AP posts, on security organizations, in order to facilitate the smuggling of sugar into this country. Now, remember, Al-Shabaab, until they left Kismayu, they were making a lot of money directly from shipping charcoal to the Persian Gulf. The fact that they withdrew from Kismayu and they've withdrawn from Baraway in no way means they're not collecting a tax, if you will, on lorries that are carrying charcoal to be shipped to the Gulf states. The fact is that sugar that's coming in via Kismayu, via Baraway, Al-Shabaab is also taxing the lorries that are carrying sugar into Kenya.
All right.
Therefore, if you're talking about rented terrorists, these are groups of people in military uniforms carrying military weapons and actually attacking and overrunning police posts and administration police camps, abducting Kenyan citizens, taking some of whom have not been returned. I would suggest that if Al-Shabaab can earn money by assisting or facilitating the sugar transporting, the illegal sugar that's shipped into Kenya, then why wouldn't they? It's just another tax to them. More importantly, the article in today's Standard was very, very clear that the corruption, the levels of corruption within the security forces along the Somali border is rife, it's endemic, and it's in fact a major threat to the country's security.
All right, let's just go back to this quote for a moment, and in the context of it not being the Al-Shabaab, then wouldn't our security agencies be done wrong in a way for hiding all of the sins of criminals against the umbrella of the Al-Shabaab and not explaining attack by attack who really is responsible?
Well, that feeds into the narrative of widespread corruption, doesn't it?
Yeah.
And also feeds into the very real probability that information gathering is being stymied, stifled, somewhere within the police, that someone is sitting on a lot of information that's not getting down to the lower ranks, it's not moving from National Intelligence Service. We've seen that in the case of Mpeketoni, where the National Intelligence Service delivered actionable intelligence to the National Police Service, which was unable to respond, according to the IPO, the Independent Policing Oversight Authority report, released, I think, on September 19th, 2014. So, in fact, you'd have to ask another question, though. Would the attacks on security officers in Dadaab, would that be part of a crime syndicate? And if it's a crime syndicate, and let's keep this very clear, destabilizing Kenya by smuggling sugar, smuggling other goods into the country and undercutting the country's economy that way is not really that far off the mark. This is not necessarily a strategic attack on Kenya's economy, but why would Al-Shabaab not want to collect money from wealthy members of a cartel who are more interested in shipping goods in untaxed into Kenya
All right.
than obeying the law.
All right, let's bring you into this discussion, Kagwe, with respect to what is being called a militarization of our security agencies. We've seen a number of military men coming into very key security posts. The prospective nominee for the post of Interior Cabinet Secretary, he is himself a former military man, but from the point of view of the KNCHR, you've been a bit uncomfortable with the deployment of the KDF internally. Why is that?
Yes, we took exception to deployment of KDF to settle issues and national security issues around the country, because it is actually supposed to be exceptional.
Yeah.
But it seems to have quickly become the norm. And as the Kenya National Commission on Human Rights, our particular areas of disquiet were the fact that the number of deployments have not been sanctioned by Parliament as required by the Constitution.
But I'm guessing a number of people would be thinking, protect the country first, act later, and the military is seen, in spite of what happened
Thank you
at
very
Westgate,
much.
as one of the last bastions of a proper, secure and working infrastructure in terms of security.
Traditionally, national security organs have operated under the deepest cloak of secrecy, if you like. And there is a tendency to subscribe to the thought or to the concept that our protection, national security, is best protected if it is done in secret. But that's not necessarily the truth. In fact, some best practices seems to point that national security interests are best served when majority of citizens are informed about what the state is doing, why it's doing it, etc. Granted, there are some aspects of national security that would require to be secret, but if everything is done under the cloak of secrecy, there's very little understanding, and where there's little understanding, there's a lot of speculation, a lot of fear, and the MOs of most modern terrorist groups around the world capitalize on just that. Capitalize on the increase of fear and increase and just the shocking and terrorizing the very minds of their victims.
Yeah.
And that is and then so in a way you will see that tactically they will be winning. There's global principles on national security and the right to information. And I think this we have in Kenya now, we have a very good opportunity to embrace these principles and explore them.
All right, let's just hold that. We've got a call right now from Kajiado. James Gitonga from Kajiado. If you can hear us, what's your comment on tonight's discussion?
Okay, for me, I think we should take this security issue as it starts with us. Actually, for these people in human rights, especially in Bulgaria, let them not shout very loudly about. I saw her yesterday in the media shouting about how these criminals are being killed. And it's very, very worrying. I would really like them to go and demonstrate how to arrest an armed person. It doesn't matter. Bora we get these criminals with guns or pangas. Actually, I worry very much for my sisters, my mothers, when they are raped. If this has ever happened to a person of your family, is when you really understand who these criminals are. Secondly, and most important is what the president said. This security starts with us. Why do we keep on offering very useless advice to government? You see all people from the opposition, those who are within the government, trying to comment on things which they don't really understand. And when we keep on saying the government has failed,
yes.
How many times, like yesterday at Grove Roundabout Cinema, I saw an AP officer running after a guy who had snatched a mobile phone from a woman. then people are just watching as him chasing this criminal around. Then it's like it is his responsibility. If these guys are stealing from us, what are you doing about it? We should take this responsibility to ourselves.
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you very much, James. Thank you very much, James, for calling. I think your point has been made. In fact, I'll come back to you on that, Kagweria. This is a very, very sensitive discussion here in Kenya. Security versus human rights. It seems as if people from the human rights world are only interested when the rights of the accused are being infringed upon, but not when the rights of the police, for instance, are being infringed upon, or when the police are dying. You say it's not correct. Why so?
It is actually not correct, but there is a certain, I think, narrative that has taken hold that we are only interested in fighting for the rights of criminals, or we are anti-law enforcement officers. That is actually not correct. The National Commission on Human Rights, we are the raison d'etre of why we exist is to ensure that a culture of human rights take hold, and also to uphold the rule of law. And the rule of law and the Constitution of Kenya, there's no place in the Constitution of Kenya where any actions that don't conform to human rights standards are endorsed. In fact, all throughout the Constitution, it is said that the national security organs, or national security principles of national security, as they are articulated in the Constitution of Kenya, are that one of the things that they must comply with and conform with is a human rights approach.
That's true, but the argument that James from Kajiado is fronting is one that has taken hold with a lot of people.
It has taken hold, and just because it has taken hold and because maybe it is gaining some ground or some traction, it does not mean it is true.
But
I will tell James tonight that it is not true.
Have you responded in terms of the abuses that police are going through, even if to just commiserate? I think that's what a lot of people are looking for.
We do commiserate. Remember, we are not a special species from out of space. We are Kenyans. The people who work in law enforcement are our brothers. They are our fathers. They are our sisters. We cry when they are killed. We cry when we see, and we are moved when we see that they are working under very difficult conditions. And actually, this is at the crux of the discussion tonight. And it is this, that national security is best protected when we have institutional reforms and institutional changes. And it is not about a replacement of a single person or one leader. And the gentleman from Kajiado was very correct, and the president is correct, that national security will be the job of every citizen and every person living in this country.
All right, Andrew, I'm going to come to you with respect to the human rights versus security debate, but we've got a call right now from Mandera. I believe it's Noor calling in from Mandera. Noor, what's your question or comment?
Yes, brother, I'm Noor Haji from Mandera.
Yes, very quickly, what's your question or comment?
Yes, actually, from where I'm sitting, I'm around 300 meters from Somalia right now.
Yeah.
I'm in Mandera town. My comment is that the movement of the moving out of Kimayo and Olelenku doesn't help much. The fact is that our policy is wrong as far as security is concerned.
Okay. All right. Noor, thank you very much.
For instance, last year, somewhere in 2013, one of the oldest center of administration police was attacked in Mandera town.
Yes.
And what happened is that there were 7 soldiers there armed with G3 rifles.
Yes.
Those Al-Shabaab guys came and attacked them. They fought like an injured lion, that those guys were more armed than them. They're using anti-aircraft and the big missiles. So the soldiers were actually destroyed. The camp was actually destroyed.
Okay.
So our government is saying that they bought the 3,000 land cruisers for our security guys, but they were not able to tell us how many of them are armored. How are our soldiers more armed and more equipped and more trained in the Al-Shabaab?
All right, Noor, that's a very interesting question. I think we'll leave it there for now. Let me just bring it back to Andrew now and start with what Noor says before we go back to the human rights versus security debate. In terms of equipping our security agencies to be up to the task, especially in those frontier counties, where is the gap?
Well, to have immediate effect, let me move back one step. 3 years ago, I had articles published in the Business Daily in December 7th and 12th, 2011, saying Operation Linda and Chi had apparently failed. Withdraw the Kenya Defense Forces back to a purpose-built combat base in support of the National Police Service. 3 years later, our national security posture is severely and significantly eroded, whether it's the number of bodies we have, live bodies we have in the National Police Service, and also the deployment of the Kenya Defense Forces domestically, as well as the increase in the forces initially committed to Operation Linda and Chi.
True,
over
but Noor
4,000.
has a specific question. Yeah.
Yes, what we need to start seeing is the movement of the KDF of those 6-wheeled armored fighting vehicles that they drove to Westgate a year ago. We need to see them setting off to head into Mandera to man the borders in the short term. Because we've lost 3 years. As far as the police, the National Police Service, we need to prioritize how we now reorganize and implement the National Police Service Act, of 2011, which has not been implemented, but we're running short of time. We need to reorganize the administration police, find out what the border control unit is all about, the rapid deployment unit. Look at their table of organization. See whether they are, in fact, as a paramilitary police organization of some 60 years, having been formed some 60, 70 years ago, are they organized to engage in operations against Al-Shabaab?
All right. This is a good point to take the discussion to another level, where we'd be discussing the prospective nominee for the post of the Interior, Cabinet Secretary for the Interior, Joseph Nkaiseri, and his qualifications are now on the screen. In 1996 to 1997, he went to U.S. Army War College. He's been to the Kennedy School of Government. He was at the Defense Staff College in India. He also went to Lanett Barracks in the 70s.
Yes.
He was in Kenyatta University. A man who seems to have, at least from the point of view of security, a very interesting and very strong educational background, but one, perhaps from my own point of view, one that leans towards a militaristic view of things and not necessarily one that's concerned with the interior.
John Allen, I think the issue of militarization is very different from the issue of deploying the Kenya Defense Forces within the borders of Kenya. That is a slippery slope towards problems.
Let's talk about Nkaiseri's qualifications.
I think his qualifications are excellent. The man is a member of Parliament. I think he's very well acquainted with civilian
is he going
leadership.
to be able to take us to that next level, given the fact that he is a person who was, at least for quite a number of years, based in an institution that checks external threats and not internal ones?
Oh, no, not at all. I would suggest that his education has trained him as a military officer, rising through the ranks. You're not just trained in leading troops with a bayonet charge. And I think the notion that somehow retired or former military officers, as a former Marine Corps officer, I think I'm more than qualified to do a lot of jobs that may or may not have anything to do with leading troops across the beach any longer. I would suggest that the kind of training that the Honorable Nkaiseri got was also included low-intensity warfare, counter-terror warfare, counterinsurgency warfare. I think that we need to look beyond the fact that people may have been in khaki or blue or green for a long period of time, and then look what they've done since retiring, which I think is now 12 years ago.
Yeah.
And therefore, I think that if we actually get behind the new cabinet secretary for the interior and say, look, sir, these are the laws, these are the institutions you have administrative control over. The National Police Service, where the act is not being implemented. You have the Kenya Forestry Service, uniformed personnel, Kenya Wildlife Service, rangers. Now, interestingly, the KFS forest guards are being trained by the British Army in how to patrol through forest jungles. The Kenya Forestry Service took delivery of a Cessna aircraft in May of 2013, which is equipped to surveil our forests to determine or to check illegal logging and charcoal production internally inside the country, which means the plane is equipped with thermal imaging, heat sensors, night vision.
Yeah, but what Nkaissery would be able to do with all of these assets?
With
what
all
would
those
your
assets,
question
is
be to
apply
him?
them. I would say, can you start combining the air wings of the different uniformed services outside of the Kenya Defense Force? See what our assets are. Also, I think as a former military man, he would also appreciate the difficulty of having the police coordinate action on the ground with air assets. There are people who the fact that there are F-5s or helicopter gunships running airstrikes in Pokot near Kapedo is very strange because there's nobody on the ground who's qualified necessarily to call for fire. Now, these are things that can be, these are kinks, these are problems that can be worked out if someone appreciates the fact that these are problems that do require 3 to 6 months reorganization and retraining.
Yeah.
But we also have to start accepting the fact that we have a serious situation, that we have a genuine insurgency spreading throughout the 3 counties of Northeast Province. Also in Lamu County. We also need to start thinking about what sort of security measures we take in the short term. In other words, having a curfew in Lamu County for 4 months, being lifted on December 24th, I believe.
All right.
But we don't seem to be interested in putting curfews in sub-counties along the Somali border with Mandera, where we've had, in the last 10 days, 64 Kenyans massacred.
I'll return to an issue that we had discussed earlier. What would your question be if you were sitting in a committee that would be vetting Nkaissery with respect to the human rights versus security debacle that we're discussing earlier and the impact that it's having on security? What would you be asking him?
Well, I would be asking if he would agree with me that these are not mutually exclusive concepts. That is, there is nothing about that's anathema to security in enforcing human rights. I mean, in fact, the real question becomes, why do we bother trying to have a secure country if we can't guarantee human rights to the population?
Okay.
You know, we have a constitution that's 4 years old now. It's not a new constitution any longer. We have laws that were passed particularly pertaining to the branches of our security apparatus. National Police Service Act of 2011. The Kenya Defense Forces Act 2012. The National Intelligence Service Act 2012. And then the National Security Council Act of 2012, none of which have really been implemented. And in fact, the longer we have the Kenya Defense Forces filling in for the police, it means we don't see a need to implement the National Police Service Act and to bring our paramilitary forces up to the level where they can, in fact, and they could, engage Al-Shabaab and other militias.
Okay, just hold that thought, Andrew. We've got another call. We've got Sylvanus from Nairobi. Sylvanus, what's your question or comment?
Thank you, Nanamo. I just wanted to comment on the issue of national security.
Yes.
I think it is time, as a country, we are supposed to define and understand the concept of national security. Because all along we have been trying to apply the military approach, which has given us a very...
Sylvanus, before you continue, just turn down the volume on your television set so that we can hear you properly.
Okay, it is done.
Okay, now carry on,
I was just saying that as a country, we need to understand the concept of national security. Because you have been relying on military security, which has not given us very positive results.
Yeah.
Even the GTI results report, which we are just trying to analyze, says that only 10% for the countries which have been using military have been successful. 80% have applied other mechanisms to succeed. That concept of national security has elements which need to be considered in line. For example, we have things like geostrategy approach, which we need to consider when we are applying the effect of our neighboring countries like Somalia.
Yes.
We have things like border security, where we keep on saying we are supposed to consider and make sure that our military is used to make sure that we protect our borders.
Sylvanus, let me interrupt your train of thought and ask you a question, because you seem to know quite a bit about the concept of national security. What would you be asking Joseph Nkaissery were you to be sitting in that room vetting him?
First of all, my belief is we need to take security as a profession. It is no longer a job. Ladies men and women who have been given that particular responsibility must do extensive research so that we provide personnel who can provide current solutions of problems like terrorism. Because what we are experiencing nowadays is as if we are in a position where we believe that our brothers and sisters who underwent all those military training those back days can provide the current solutions. We need to work on the institution, just the way our sister is saying there, so that we bring men and women who can reform. Actually, the Inspector General, the Cabinet Secretary who is being appointed, should work towards making sure that they professionalize the security system. So one of the questions which I might ask, which mechanism, which strategies do they have in place to make sure that they can change the entire security system and create a link between the security apparatus and the entire citizenry?
All right.
For example, under police reform, there is one component that has never been utilized. We have never made Kenyans to understand the meaning of policing. We only deal with the aspect of police. That's why we normally have the breakage between the citizens and the police agencies.
All right, Sylvanus, I'm going to stop you there. Thank you very much for calling in with your comments. Kagweria, let me go to you now with respect to Joseph Nkaissery, and also a person who you will have the opportunity of vetting, which will be the prospective Inspector General. Sylvanus has enumerated quite a number of things in terms of national security. What are the questions that you are going to be asking the prospective nominees for the post of the Inspector General?
With respect to both the Cabinet Secretary, Interior, and the IG, I would have one important question.
Yeah.
And it would be in reference with Article 238 of the Constitution, specifically Sub-Article 2, which, and this is the enumeration of the principles of national security. I would ask them, given the reality of the challenges that Kenya faces in national security, securing our borders, ensuring the safety and the security of citizens, and even just the general threat to the country, and given the specific mandates of both national security organs, because the Cabinet Secretary will be very critical in the National Security Council.
That's true.
And the IG as well. I would ask them this: what steps will you take to ensure that national security operations and activities and policies and implementation of national security activities and will be in compliance with the law and will observe utmost respect for the rule of law, democracy, human rights, and fundamental freedoms.
All right.
And that's the direct wording I've lifted from Article 238 of the Constitution.
Sylvanus raised a very interesting point in terms of professionalism of the individuals who will be taking this. Andrew, I'll go to you. The last 4 cabinet secretaries and ministers for internal security all came from one community, the Maasai. It's very hard for a person from another part of the country to say that, okay, these were appointments based on merit, at least to the extent that they were only from one tribe. You're hearing of MPs from the North Rift now calling for the post of the IG to be retained within the Rift Valley. In terms of meritocracy, where would you place the questions of regional balance, which is a very interesting, very big debate here in Kenya.
Well, we have constitutional requirements for gender balance.
Mhm.
There regional balance is certainly important. I don't believe that any one group has a monopoly on martial spirit or the ability to run a police service. I don't believe that any one racial group has the ability to wage war better than any other racial group. And those people who thought they could do so have often been very much surprised to their detriment. I think we need, I think a very key point that you should be raising is, first of all, we have a gap now in the National Police Service. We have a missing officer, senior officer. We have a 90-day period without a command figure, it seems. There seems to be a problem with the acting, who's going to be acting, and there are also problems with the people who might be acting and who might be applying. They all be coming from the very same system that Mr. Kakamega came out of. And I would suggest that the vetting process for the IG must be much more rigorous this time around than it was the case in 2012. In other words, just getting a name or names in as IG, Deputy IG, and saying, police reforms, not right. That was a very poor showing. I would suggest that the applicants for the IG, the position of IG of the police, should be asked exactly how they will implement the various chapters, specifically of the National Police Service Act, to give us that consolidated command and control, which the IPOA said it was lacking at in Peketoni.
Okay, but very simply, a lot of Kenyans will be looking at a very simple statistic, very simple gauge to be able to measure is how secure are they. We've got more statistics from the Global Terrorism Index that show you where Kenya is right now. If you can just 12. Get them on screen exactly. We're 12th out of 162 countries. And look at the countries that are ahead of us. I mean, Iraq, Afghanistan. We're really in the league of countries that are suffering in terms of security. The questions that you're going to be asking with respect to changing that statistic in the short term and in the long term, Kagweria, what are they?
One, as I've told you, for me, one of the most important questions would be what steps a person in that position will take to comply with that particular constitutional requirement. But apart from that, as you well said, in terms of the objects and functions of the National Police Service, professionalism is the first one that is listed among the highest standards of professionalism, discipline among all the members of the service. And that therefore the person who leads that kind of service must himself also be a person of a very disciplined person of highest professional standards.
Okay, Kagweria, let me just interrupt you. That statistic points to a more institutional problem than just the problem of an individual. As you comment, your final comment for this evening, what are you going to be asking with respect to the institution that these people are going to be leading, how they intend to change these institutions?
A commitment to change, a commitment to reform. You see, there's a lot of talk about police reforms or reforms in whatever sector it is, but it takes more than talk to actually reform. And it is very difficult for a law enforcement agency that is that runs on commands. It's a command structure. To reform, it is more difficult for them to actually change a modus operandi or the way business actually runs, because this is has been ingrained for years, and it's part of the culture of that institution.
All right, so you're going to be asking about how exactly they're going to be able to change that culture,
or what ideas they have.
All right.
About ensuring the completion of that transformation for purposes of really completing the reforms.
And real reform. And we've got another statistic on the West attacks of 2013. Kenya again is right up there with the Westgate attack. Considering what happened at Westgate, from communication to the bungling going forward, also pointing to serious institutional flaws. What would you be asking the Inspector General, prospective Inspector General, or as well as a Cabinet Secretary for the Interior with respect to changing our institutions as you wind up, Andrew?
I would ask the prospective Inspector General of Police if he or she has the guts to stand up to the head of the Kenya Defense Forces who comes into a situation and wants to supplant the police authority. The law is very clear. KDF operate in security operations with the prior approval of the National Assembly and in support of the National Police Service. And I would then ask the Cabinet Secretary, are you, sir, willing to back up the Inspector General of Police and tell the military to go back to the barracks if they're not willing to support the National Police Service?
All right. Very interesting way to end it there. Of course, those discussions are going to be happening in real time. You will be part of them next week and in the coming weeks. Thank you very much for joining us. Kagweria Mbogori from the Kenya National Commission of Human Rights, chairperson. Hope you'll be joining us again in future conversations. Of course, Andrew Franklin, thank you very much for joining us. Now, in terms of securing Kenya, there always is a point to the discussions that we have here on Checkpoint. So we're going to go straight into that. What is the point in terms of the discussion that we've had on securing Kenya? Now, as you've heard, there's been a very serious lacuna in the implementation of laws concerned with security, from the National Police Service Act to other acts that would bolster our security agencies and build our institutions. And that has to happen with respect to the leadership of these various institutions. The Inspector General of Police, as well as the Cabinet Secretary for the Interior, must be right at the front in terms of leading the charge in the implementation of the laws, the very robust laws that Kenya has, and in looking for areas where our laws might be weak and forcing or not forcing rather, but pushing the reforms in those areas legally. Secondly, the strengthening of institutions is something that should have happened a long time ago, based on this discussion, and of course based on the very sad statistics that came out just within 10 days of Mandera and the many other people who have died over the past 3 years, especially with respect to terrorism and insecurity around the country. There seems to be a failure of police and people who are concerned with the discipline forces internally to respond to very many attacks across the country. And therefore, the president, the executive, and all arms of government must ensure that our institutions, our security institutions, are bolstered for longevity. And finally, the very interesting question of politics versus merit. It's no small statistic that prior to this prospective nomination of Joseph Kaiseri, the past 3 occupants of that seat all came from one community. Whereas they may have had their qualifications, is merit the first qualification or merit the first consideration when looking at prospective cabinet secretaries as well as the Inspector General of Police? If it isn't, then perhaps that is what needs to change, and that is the point. All right, and we've got lots of feedback coming in on our Twitter hashtag. That's Checkpoint on this discussion. I'm going to be reading it in a few short minutes, but now we take a short break and carry on with the bulletin this weekend. Very, very interesting ones coming up right after the break, including that segment that we all love, Mock the Week with Wilson Buru. So stay tuned. All right, this week on Mock the Week, we've got a very, very big surprise for you. You'll know what it is in a moment. But first, 'tis the season to be merry. And President Uhuru Kenyatta has more than one reason to be very, very, very merry this Christmas. This week, one man was told to get out of the kitchen that seemingly became too hot for him, and one Yvonne Okwara took security matters into her own hands. Jerry Mushura, that's a surprise, has this and more on this week Mock the Week.
Good evening and and welcome to Mock the Week. My name is Jerry Muchura, and as you can see, in line with what has been happening in the government, we also have decided to shuffle things a bit. This guy has moved himself to the civil service.
Yeah, I'm going to join the civil service now.
But before we get to shuffling and reshuffling,
every day I'm shuffling.
Let's talk about this guy. President Uhuru Kenyatta, Mr. Shuffler himself, who is happier than a boy with a brand new bike. Yes, President Uhuru Kenyatta learned this week that ICC prosecutor Fatou Bensouda decided to leave the head of state alone because she had no evidence, leading to many Kenyans doing this.
Hey, see you, baby.
It also turns out that the decision by Bensouda to throw in the towel also ensured that most Kenyans all went so closer to God.
I see it like this. You see, Jesus was crucified with two thieves, isn't it? So, in this case, I see it Uhuru as Jesus, and the two thieves as Ruto and the other one, Sam. Yeah.
You know what? I agree with that guy. I guess there's a huge similarity between Jesus and President Uhuru. A lot of similarity. I mean, one is the son of God the Father, and the other one is the son of the founding father. So yeah, I guess that's a pretty legitimate comparison, huh? All in all, it was joy all around. One can only hope that the joy and the selfies will lead to things improving, security-wise, that is. Speaking of security, remember this guy? Really? You don't? Are you serious? Let me refresh your memory.
Smoke you are seeing from the building is as a result of the terrorists setting some mattress on fire.
Yeah, that's the guy. He was the comedian-in-chief who was also in charge of internal security. Well, guess who's jobless? After dishing out several half-truths on what was going on in the country, the truth was finally served to him in a steaming cup of hot truth. That he'd be looking for a job sooner rather than later.
I have today nominated the Honorable Major General Retired Joseph Ngaiseri as the new Cabinet Secretary for Interior and Coordination of National Government.
There were talks along the corridors of power earlier this week that one Joseph Olelenku was up for the prestigious award of the Moran of the Burning Spear for his exemplary work as Chef of Security. But as it turns out, that was never going to be. But you know what? We here on Mock the Week are a sad, very sad lot. I mean, who are we going to be making fun of now? Well, thank you, Mr. President, for ruining our fun. But you know what? Let's look back at the moments in Olelenku's distinguished career that warmed the cockles of our hearts.
I did apply.
So do you think you got more than you got?
When God decides to bless you, there is no limit.
I have no doubt in myself that I'm up to the task. There is no possibility of failure in this case.
A known number of armed militia attacked Mpeketoni and Kibaoni town in Lamu County. I want to confirm that immediately the government swung into action through the KDF. In the foresight operation, we retrieved a large amount of terrorism material and an insignia including Al-Shabaab flags. During the attack, 48 innocent lives were lost. Already some offensive have been taken. They have been identified where they came from.
Oh, we'll miss you, Mr. Olelenku. We'll miss just how easy you made it for us to make fun of you. But before he left, Olelenku had a special message. And in it he said, insecurity affects every single Kenyan. Which brings us to, wait, maybe, just maybe, that's the reason why our colleague Yvonne Okwara got married yesterday.
I give you this ring
as a sign of our marriage. As a sign of our marriage.
Could it be that people took the words of the fired internal security boss quite literally? But as the law of the jungle states, there is safety in numbers, and two are much better than one. And as Yvonne Okwara has declared, her security starts with her getting married. Have you thought about your own security? And since Olelenku has left the building, let me just prepare your mind for the next laughingstock. Arsenal.
Will Arsenal win anything for the next 20 years?
Never, 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 never.
Jerry, good job in replacing that civil servant. Never, never, never should he come back. But anyway, that's just my opinion. Now, from pranking an entire city to becoming one of the best stand-up comedians in Western Kenya, Lawrence Oyange, also known as Kakamega Spandita Fundimogo, has come a long way with a long name. KTN's Fred Omulo caught up with a funny man who broke into the global consciousness when he set up a parallel electoral commission to quote-unquote assist the mighty United States of America to conduct its elections in Kisumu.
In November 2008, the whole world was hanging in suspense as Americans headed to the ballot to choose between John McCain and Barack Obama. Back in Kisumu City, two comedians decided to pull off the prank of their lives and convince uninformed residents that their votes were necessary for Obama to win. Their timing was perfect, and hundreds fell for the trick. Fast forward to 2014, Lawrence Oyange, now going by the name Kakamega, is a household name in Kisumu's entertainment circles.
I think that was the luckiest break of our lives, because when it was a stupid idea, but it became international. It became something that people still remember us with. And they believed that the votes in Kenya were going to be added to the ones in America, and Obama will come up as a winner. Others voted for McCain, of course, as the opposition.
Their bold mischief that earned them international headlines soon started paying dividends when radio stations in the lakeside town started offering Oyange jobs. Today he hosts a morning show on Namlolwe FM.
Na kama haki ya Mungu ungekuwa umenichezea ile rekodi yangu ile nilikwambia. Si unajua leo tunaomboleza jamaa wetu Mbwapawa kabisa Shumbabu. Huyu jamaa anaitwa nani Kanjwang. Kwa vile leo Kanjwang amekufa, nimetoa ng'ombe 100 watu washerekee, alafu mutalipa pesa baadaye. Na hiyo yote ni maembe dodo.
The popularity of his morning shows soon attracted companies who wanted him to be their MC during corporate events. There is no major political rally in Western Kenya where he is not the MC, and individuals still seek his services for weddings, funerals, and graduations.
Radio, I love radio because it keeps me going. Yeah? I interact a lot with my fans on radio because I speak more than 5 languages. I speak Luo, Luya, Kiswahili, Kamba, Kikuyu, Kisii, and Zaire.
Besides that, the king of Western humor decided to formalize his training and is now pursuing a degree in mass communication.
What I can say about radio presenters and their training, I think for as much as one has talent, you need to sum it up with education. Yeah? It's not only talent. Talent plus education, training makes one a complete fellow.
Ego vile leo nimepoteza rafiki yangu mkubwa sana, sivyo? Nataka niomboleze kwa Kiswahili. Nataka nipige ile kitu inaitwa jovi. Mimi nataka kusema, wanasema nataka kubweka na naogopa. Yaani aduagweyo tupona lord. Nyati. Ayo ni jovi.
One of his best impersonations is of departed Homabay Senator Otieno Kajwang, who through a strange twist of fate died on the same day Oyange lost his father. The best he could do was immortalize the hero in the only way he knows.
Vijana musilale, dale lale, vijana musilale, bado mapambano. Now that I'm going to heaven, malaika wote, usicheze na pati. And if you know wewe ni malaika, na wewe ni mol.
Fred Omulo, KTN Weekend Prime.
Na kama ni ngumu, tutakufukuza kupati.
What talent there. Well done, Kakamega. Now it's almost time for sports news, and Moses Hisi is in our sports studio. Moses, like we were talking about yesterday, less happy news. I wish it was as happy as the way Kakamega was making us laugh just now, but were very, very sad results there for the national sevens, isn't there?
Actually, it's not that happy because Paul Trues is saying that he'll forge forward with the current crop of players that he has in the camp. So maybe we still have to do some little bit more waiting.
Okay, then I'll leave you to it.
Yeah, we'll have that and much more in today's edition of KTN Sports, but we take a little short break. Tomato Motorsports now. Ivan Guia reigned supreme in the last series of this year's East African Motocross Championship. After an impressive display, Ivan went on to win the overall championship that ended today at the Jamhuri Park. Tatu Maina, who has had an impressive year, came on second. Robinson Okenye has that and more.
Ivan's prowess played out as he took charge of the last round of this year's Autocross Championship. Despite facing his closest rival Tutu Maina, Ivan never relented as he took control from the start to win the MX1 category. Guia, who has had a fine run this year, hopes to carry on with the performance come next season. In the MX65 category, Maina Wanjigi proved his worth as he won the competition on point accumulation, despite losing on the final series. The youngster has now set his strides on moving to a different category. In other categories, Jet Tankunen won the MX50 class, with Raf Gardner and Jan Tankunen coming in second and third respectively. Rolf Kihara won the MX85 category, while Ngugi Waweru won the MX125 class. Robinson Okenye, KTN Sports.
Thank you, Robinson, for that. And now, in our local sports brief, after impressing in the Continental and bagging the Africa's Hockey Club title, Telkom Orange has its best and retained their hockey title today. In matters of the track, Alex Mutiso and Monica Wangari reigned supreme in the South Imenti Safaricom road race. Hassan Juma has that and more in our local sports wrap.
Kisumu Simba are out of revenge, missing out on the top gun last year as they took on fierce rivals Kenya Police. The match kicked off on a disappointing note as both teams failed to sound the balls in the first half. In the second half, Kisumu Simba's determination to win the championship played out as they netted twice in the second half, leaving the servicemen with no option but to reply once. In another match, Kenyatta University beat Parklands 5-3 to win the National League. Telkom Orange retained the Hockey League title by beating Strathmore University 5-4. Elsewhere, Monica Wangari from Nyandarua won the South Imenti Safaricom road race, clocking a time of 58 minutes 4.4 seconds. Shalmit Murioki from Nyeri was second in a time of 58 minutes 20.1 seconds, while Lucy Karimi was third. Alex Mutiso the toss of the men's side as he cut the tape in a time of 48 minutes and 39.2 seconds.
Haikuwa mbaya kwangu kwa sababu huko Makueni kuna milima. Kwa hivyo sasa wakati tumeanza hiyo mbio sikutambika kukimbia kwa sababu nimeshaanzoea hiyo milima.
Kosi ilikuwa milima sana, lakini nimeng'ang'ana. Bio yangu inakuanga 42 kilomita, leo naona nimejaribu sana kwa 15k kuingia namba 3.
All right, let's get into some of your feedback from Checkpoint. The hashtag, of course, was Checkpoint. Alex Ogeto says the police and intelligence need to reform the standard operating procedures on handling sensitive info. Vincent Ouma says Kenya's Achilles heel is tribalism and insecurity is one of these symptoms. Gadara has highlighted the fact that Joseph Nkaiseri was recommended by the TJRC for prosecution. So that might be a question that will be asked, hopefully, next Thursday when he appears before the Parliamentary Committee on Security. Wais Abdulaziz says the narrative on security starts with me and you is nonsense. I'm a taxpayer and my taxes pay the NIS and the NIS should do its job. Finally, Moses Njoroge says, I think militarization is not a bad idea. This Nkaiseri guy has quite vast experience and hopes he will deliver. Well, that's where we'll leave it tonight on KTN Weekend Prime. Thank you very much for joining us. Remember to keep it KTN throughout the week. Your most comprehensive news coverage happens right here. I'm John Alanamu. Good night.
This is KTN. Welcome home.